Welcome, welcome. This is Val, and I am here with Bill Miles and Kristen Noel. Now, Bill and Kristen, they are divorce coaches. They have a program called Best Self Intuitive Divorce Program, which I'm going to ask them to describe to you folks. But what they do is they help women, moms, get off that emotional roller coaster in terms of when you are in a divorce process. Now, both Bill and Kristen went through a very tumultuous divorce separately themselves years ago. And so they have spent the time in the trenches experiencing that emotional turmoil, the roller coaster 18 years ago. And when people didn't have as many resources at our disposal like we do now, the interwebs, right, where we can have access to people who can assist us. And so their goal and what they help people do is they save, your resources, your time, your money, your emotions, your heartache, and also keeping kids out of the glue or out of the war zone, as it were. And together, Bill and Kristen, they founded the Best Self magazine and they created this program. And Bill, he's a holistic life coach, and Kristen is a certified intuitive life coach. Welcome, Bill and Kristen.
That
Thank
was
you.
the most
Thank you very
beautiful
much.
introduction. I don't think you need us to add to that. Thank
I'm
you.
glad.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad.
So
Okay.
happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm super happy to have you on. And just as we were warming up and having a little chat earlier, I'm super curious. Now, you guys are business partners, but you are life partners, as I understand it. And when you guys each went through your separate divorces, you have little kids then,
Mhm.
and those little kids are now young adults.
So
Yes.
it's a blended family.
Yeah.
Kristen had, at the time that we met each other, a son who was about 5. And for me, my children, when we went through divorce, were 5, 8, and 10. So all of those children are now in their 20s.
So
They're all
4
adults.
kids altogether.
Four kids. 3. I brought 3 to the party. She brought 1. Yeah.
And well, that's a really blended family. Holy cow, we have lots of challenges, I'm sure.
Well, especially when you have contentious divorces going on simultaneously. Yeah, there's a
Yes.
lot. I love how you mentioned keeping the children out of the conflict.
Yes. Yes.
It's such an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about how, your kids will get over your divorce if you let them, but where they really get hurt is where they, like, of course, there's always a time of transition, but where they get really hurt is if the parents are unable to disengage from that conflict and where it, continues on. And so one of the things that you said you could share, and my listeners would love to hear, I'm very sure, is, because we talked about as we were warming up for this, we were talking about, how a person who's going through okay, they're going through the separation and divorce. They have a lot of pain themselves, well, most of the time. But then also there's a lot of confusion out there in terms of, what's the best lawyer to hire, how do I move forward in a way that makes a lot of sense? And the way you guys described it is how do I avoid getting on a runaway train, where it is, you're expending your valuable resources and it's an emotional nightmare for you and your kids, and it's expensive, and it's all life consuming. And so in terms of that, what I'm hoping you can share with us is, those steps that someone can take control of their divorce so that, like, and you mentioned you have 5 steps that you recommend where people can take control of their divorce so that they save the time, money, heartache, tumultuousness. And I loved what you said earlier, that you could become the CEO of your divorce. And I'm super interested to hear how you would explain those 5 things.
First of all, I would just start by saying that the tentacles of divorce reach far and wide, and nothing is untouched. So really, it is like the most massive upheaval of your life because it's emotional, it's fear-inducing. It touches your finances, it touches your fear of the future. How am I going to take care of my kids? How am I going to take care of myself? Like, is this, what is this all going to mean? And it just, it's like a cyclone.
Yes.
So the first and foremost, before we even get into the steps, it's really about, and this is like, we're not, and these aren't just words, airy fairy, roses and unicorns words. It really is about, our work is dedicated to helping mothers get grounded, get quiet, get still, so that they can lean into all these other arenas that they're going to have to lean into and make decisions that are aligned with them, that are aligned with their intuition, that are aligned with their heart, that are aligned with, something that they can live with the rest of their lives. Because you're going to hire, most likely you'll be hiring a team of some sort. They'll be either attorneys or mediators or child psychiatrists, or you'll be working with various people. At the end of the day, all of those people are going to go home. Their job will end. The decisions will be over. The case will be settled. And you're the one that's going to go home and have to live with the ramifications of those decisions. So you really want to make sure, you want to put yourself up, set yourself up in the best footing so that you can make decisions that you can at least feel really good about. I made this decision with the best of intentions for me and for my children and for our future.
Can I just interrupt you there? Because you mentioned grounded. And I think that's a word we often hear a lot. And sometimes I think that people don't always understand exactly what that means if they don't live on the left coast of Canada or something, because we talk about that a lot here. But like when you say grounded, can you kind of explain it? So I'm imagining a person, they're kind of in they're in a perfect storm, right? And you mentioned that you specifically focus on moms. And so she's in a perfect storm. She's got financial concerns. She's worried about her children. She's got her own broken heart. She's overwhelmed. She's probably got like way more tasks on her plate than she might normally, and navigating a lot. And so I'm curious to know, when you're talking about someone getting grounded, like what does that look like from her perspective for the moms who are listening?
Well, just really simply put, I mean, you take all of that. That's like a recipe for hysteria, right? That's a recipe for getting worn out. That's a recipe for getting sick. That's a recipe for being up all night. That's a recipe for being strung out. All of those things, yourself, like when you're operating in that mode, you're going to wake up and you're going to have a really short fuse. You're going to scream at your kids. You're going to lash out at someone. You're going to say regrettable things. You're going to take regrettable action. So it really is about self-awareness. How do we get to a place where we are aware of our motivations? Why are we doing something? And a lot of times we really just ask moms to, like, lean back. You don't have to answer everything. You don't have to make all these decisions right now. Lean back and figure out, because there's no like one formula, but lean back and sink into, how do I put myself in the best positioning to make these critical decisions? I'm sure you want to add to that, Bill.
Yeah.
And part of the 5 steps, if you will, that we'll talk about here in one second, are really geared towards, it's a methodology that we have found is very effective for ourselves as we were going through it, for the clients we work with, at helping them become grounded. So in a sense, when we explain these 5 shifts, it'll kind of answer your question.
Okay.
How do you get to that stage? But one thing I will say, stacking on what Kristen says, is that a big part of the transformation that these women go through with us is breaking cycles that have held them back and kept them stuck for years, sometimes for the whole life. But, we help them. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just sorry, I interrupted you there. I so interested you should say that, like these cycles, right? Like I was married for 18 years and, we're amicable now, 3.5 years later after our separation. But like we, one of the things I'd always say, whenever we would have an argument or something, it was almost like you're on this crappy bus journey and you're like, there'd be all these stops. Oh, we're at the sniping phase here. Oh, great. That's awesome. Okay, we're gonna do that for a while. And now we're at the cold shoulder phase. Okay, that's the next stop, right? And it was just so predictable and irritating. And and you're on this a bus or train trip or whatever, and it's just happening, and you're going, yeah. So
I love that metaphor. That's such a, like, I love,
You're gonna have to borrow that.
It's
yes,
exactly.
please.
Yeah. No, it's like,
bus ride.
we call it the unhealthy dance.
Mm-hmm.
We call it that. It's like, it's a dance that you repeat. You both put your shoes on, the steps, you put the music on, you repeat, you keep dancing. And then what we really do is and like when you were using this wonderful metaphor, I was thinking like, yeah, it's a bus ride, and you just keep going on the same course, repeat, and the same course, repeat, and the same course, repeat.
Why?
But here's the deal. If one person takes off the dancing shoes, one person doesn't step onto the dance floor, guess what? There's no dance.
There's that pattern break, right? Someone got off the bus.
And it's very scary for some people. Even if you feel in your heart, I'm ready for this, I need to move forward, I need to shift things, I don't want to fall into this anymore, I'm done with this dynamic, to actually take that step is a big step for a lot of women. They've been conditioned.
Oh, yeah.
For good reason.
This is also why we always, it's very, very hard for someone who's going through this pain initially to see this, but we always get to the place where we reveal to people that divorce is an ending, but it's also a beginning.
Oh,
and
so true.
And it really is an opportunity. And even if the marriage ended, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a failure. Especially for mamas, right? Mamas, they can just look over and see those kids. How can you ever regret having this most precious gift in your life?
Yeah.
So it really is like a spiritual journey where, maybe this contract was meant to be done. And maybe it doesn't have to be so contentious. And maybe we don't have to alienate our children from the other parents. And maybe we don't have to use them as a pawn. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can use this experience. And maybe we can say, you know what, at the end of the day, even if you're the one that's initiating it or not initiating it, maybe we just weren't meant to stay together forever because this is really unhealthy and we can't seem to break this cycle. And ultimately, maybe, and more than maybe, probably, definitely, everyone involved will end up in a better place.
We can all grow.
Totally. And almost always, virtually always, I've literally dealt with thousands of people going through divorce in the past 25 plus years. And I've had a couple tragic situations where people didn't pull through twice. But other than those two situations, everybody else has said, I could not see that at the time. It was the best thing that ever happened. One person said, when her husband had an affair, when her child was in preschool, and so humiliating, everybody knew except her, blah, blah, blah. She said, that woman did me the best favor of my life.
Yes.
And, the growth she experienced was something she couldn't even imagine possible at all, and she actually, married quite young and got to know herself, right? And is just having a great time, essentially going out with herself, right?
We love to tell those stories because it gives people hope that they too will have this on the other side of the horizon, right?
Yeah.
That it is possible. It's definitely hard to see. It's hindsight. We can't see hindsight when we're in the mess, where we're in the muck and mire and we're stuck in the weeds.
And you also feel so alone. Sometimes it can be a very lonely experience, even though statistically millions of people are going through divorce. When you're in it, it feels like you're the only one that's ever been through this.
Totally. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. It can be very isolating. And, and particularly, again, if people are really busy, they've got a lot on their plate and they just need that connection or that help. And very, very isolating.
So with that, I will dive into what these 5 steps are. We don't need
yes. Okay. And just to reiterate, these are the 5 steps essentially to become the CEO of your divorce, to gain control of it so that you are not going to be the person who, is on that runaway train, right? On that continued
5 steps
loop.
to really take control of your divorce.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the first step is what we call prioritize you. And it's one that I put that out there. It's easy to dismiss it. It's easy to, it's really about self-care. And that can seem like a fluffy buzzword. It can seem unimportant. It can seem like, oh, I know that.
Or who's got time for self-care? I'm busy.
All that.
I can't take on one more thing. I don't add one more thing to my list, right? But it's a non-negotiable. It's actually a non-negotiable.
can I just jump in and ask you this question here, Bill, because you're talking about this, do you find that you get a lot of, I mean, I'm assuming the people you work with are coachable, they're open to your ideas and suggestions that come to you for help, but do you get a lot of pushback on the self-care one?
We don't get pushback like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's not for me. But there is a little eye rolling. Is this really important? Like, I don't want to go to the gym. I'm here to figure out divorce. You know what I'm saying? Not how to get fit. And the fact is, we're not really talking about how to get fit. Self-care is a very broad term. Movement is a big part of it. Finding solitude is a big part of it. Connecting with nature is a big part of it. All of this. Sometimes our clients are already active, very active. They do yoga or go to the gym. What they need is to take time and read a book. You know, they just need time for themselves. So self-care is really, it's nurturing, it's giving yourself permission to say,
right, whatever that means for you.
Whatever that means, I'm worthy of that. And I'm going to be better for my children and for myself in this process and for my work if I honor myself in this way.
Especially for mamas who have spent years taking on everything, everyone's agendas, everyone's to-do lists, everyone's tasks, and their own needs, wants, desires, and self-care falls to the bottom, as I say, of the laundry pile.
Yeah.
And there it stays, right? So it's just that figuring out, renegotiating a way to honor yourself, take care of yourself, like Bill says, nurture yourself so that you can take care of your children, so that you can make these very difficult decisions, so that you can heal and keep, as we love to say, becoming.
What this is really about.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, yeah, that's number one. And it comes in many forms, as I said. Number two is to become the CEO of your divorce. And that's a bit of a counterintuitive idea. Like people, and sometimes they think, that's just what I need is more work right now to take on. And that's really not what it's about. It's a mindset shift. It's the idea of not letting divorce happen to you, but rather being proactive about it, about taking a leadership role, about actually stepping in and having a vision for what you want. And we work with our clients to help develop that vision. Yeah. And then being able to communicate it, because you know what? We weren't taught, most of us, how to communicate in conflict situations and so forth. Many people have patterns of like backing down or, you know, oppression, that we help you stand up and say, this is important. And if you don't design the way this is going to unfold, it will be designed for you, period.
Right. Right. If you don't,
it's probably not going to meet your agenda.
Right. Right. And I like the, go ahead, Kristen, what were you going to say?
We also, to that point, crafted something called a divorce declaration. And this is a process that we take people through. And it's really, in the beginning, it feels a little bit daunting because, of course, you're going through the divorce process. And really, when someone says to you, well, what do you want? You say, I just want it to be over. Just make it go away. I just want it to be done.
Right.
And so in the vein of,
I'm just laughing so hard because
I know
it's just
you can
so
relate,
true.
right?
Oh, I really can. I remember when I went through my separation, like, and the point where we got to the agreement was only 6 months, said my husband's lawyer. I'm thinking it was awful. That 6 months, it was every moment felt just so excruciating, just not knowing, right? And I'd done so many of these and not realizing, like, I didn't have a lawyer, but I was on the other side of the table, as it were, and it's just excruciating. And you're right, like, vision, are you kidding me? I just want to get through this, right? I just want to get to cross the street to the other side.
But it's a really powerful document to craft for yourself, because what it really does is it's like a permission slip and a prod. It's like a permission slip to actually be heard and let your truth out. Like, what is it that I want? What do I want the tone of my divorce to be? How do I want the tone of the house to be? What kind of a parent do I want to be? What kind of a person do I want to be? What do I want life to look like after? And when you can sort of prod yourself into doing this exercise and crafting this declaration, it sort of becomes this funnel that everything then runs through. So let me just say, like, maybe a month down the road, or 2 months down the road, something comes up and you've got to make a decision. And then you stop and you say, is this in alignment with what I have outlined in my divorce declaration? Everything needs to go through that funnel. And if it's not in alignment, reroute.
Oh, hey, it's me. Interrupting a little bit because I want videos like this to reach more people. So if you are enjoying what you see, if you're finding it helpful, please hit the subscribe button, which is somewhere up there. And also tell me, what was the biggest takeaway you had with respect to this video? Leave it in the comments below and I will answer every comment, every question, because that's what I do.
And it doesn't mean that this is, the divorce declaration can be a very fluid thing, but Bill and I really had like the most profound experience with a client who has just done amazing through the program. And she had a really hard time crafting this divorce declaration. But she kept, she kept at it and she did it and she came to the other side. And when we sort of were like coming to the end of our coaching, we asked her in our final session, would you mind pulling that divorce declaration out and reading it out loud? And I swear to God, the three of us were tears just streaming down our cheeks because she even said, I didn't really understand the method to the madness. I didn't really understand why and how this is all going to fit together and what you were trying to get me to do. But I trusted the process and I was all in because I knew I needed to do divorce differently. And she had not only met her benchmarks, which at the time seemed like pie in the sky, but she exceeded them. She really exceeded them. This is the thing. When we plant a seed and we nurture it, it grows.
Totally. Yeah, it really does. And when you put
literally
it out there to
everything she put in that declaration, she could check the box by the time.
So great. I love it.
And her life just completely unfolded in so many ways.
And I just want to say one thing about that. She had actually exceeded everything in the divorce process. It wasn't like, oh, let's get, a year down the road, on the other side of the divorce. She was still in the divorce process, but it completely informed how she reacted to everything that was thrown at her.
Right. That's great.
So that's the nugget. That's the juicy nugget, because we can't control our partners. We can't control all the experiences and events and things that happen, but we can control how we respond to it. And learning how to like take back that power for yourself is like, first of all, it's not just a skill for divorce. It's a life skill for dealing with any adversity.
Yeah. No kidding. Oh, I love it. I love it.
So she started thriving, and her child had a 4-year-old son, 5 now, began to thrive. And it just, even though she was still in the process of divorce, her relationship with her ex shifted completely, how to unplug the triggers, the whole thing.
Wow, that's great.
So anyway, we do that up front because it's so important in setting the tone. And what Kristen was describing really is our shift number 3, which is our intuitive divorce method, which is take the declaration, then use that as a filter when you have to make decisions, when you're contemplating various outcomes, whether it's custody, whether it's money, whether it's anything. Run it through this filter. Is this in alignment with what I established I want to do? And then you just make your decisions without having to second guess yourself anymore. You now feel confident and grounded, as you were originally asking.
That's great.
And what you want.
That's interesting that you should say that, because I know that, a lot of very successful entrepreneurs, for example, they will have their vision, like the things that they say yes to, and they'll have lots of opportunities, shiny things, or, things that kind of seem like, an attractive option for them. But if it isn't in alignment with their vision for their companies or whatever, they're like, no, I have to say no to that because that's off brand. And so when you think about in this situation, when someone has this filter or this vision, and it's because, again, there's certain things that you can make his snap decision in a in a negotiation that is so or anger, right? Can sometimes help you make a decision. But if it's not in alignment, then and can you share an example, like an anecdote of where someone has had an opportunity to make a decision, but then they went to their vision and went, wait, that's not in alignment? Do you have a sample of that you could share?
I would say yes. one of them, so this particular client, a big part of her declaration was kind of carving out her own identity separate from her ex. Okay, stepping into her power and releasing this codependency.
Yep.
And communicating respectfully with the child in a way that he could feel safe to express emotionally. So her ex would challenge her with demands, because that was kind of their MO, right? That was their dance.
Yep.
And initially she would have these knee-jerk reactions and respond right away. And it would cause conflict. And that was part of the dance. It was a cycle that would repeat.
Yep.
But we encouraged her to pause and don't respond. Go back to your declaration. Does this feel right to you? What she's asking for, how does this sit with you? And she'd go, whoa, no, that's not actually what I really want.
Wow.
And I don't think that's going to benefit our son.
So a big part of what you were just saying too is like taking that beat too, right? As opposed to right away, reacting. So you're responding, but you're not reacting. Yeah.
Pausing.
And you also have to really be aware of like what state you're in when you are responding, right? So Val, when you said off brand, I really love that, because in divorce, you are the brand.
Yes.
So people often say to us, what is an intuitive divorce? What does it mean to, divorce intuitively? And once again, it sounds like an obvious thing, like, well, I'm in touch with my intuition, but it's like, are you really? Because if you're just like, like you're responding to everything, screaming, again, the regrettable things, right? Doing things out of revenge, doing things out of, to get back at someone, to undermine someone, but not really like looking at the 30,000 view of like, how is this really going to impact everything? How is this going to impact my health, my well-being, my children? When there's conflict in the house, kids feel unsafe.
They do.
They feel unsafe. They feel vulnerable. That doesn't mean that, obviously we want to keep them out of the conflict, but that doesn't mean they're not out of the dialogue of mommy's sad right now, or I'm having a really hard day. Let's talk about that. What can we do to shift a bad day? Like embroil them in it, like, so that they don't think it's like, because like Bill and I often talk with our clients, if you're not going to have these conversations with your kids, it's going to grow far worse, like the boogeyman under the bed. Like it will be far worse in their head than not. So an intuitive divorce is really learning how to, run through your own filter, of like, is this aligned with me? Like, and you know what, some of us through the busyness of our lives, running, productivity, this everything on overdrive, we don't really take the time to process, how does this really feel? How does this really feel? And what do I really want it to be? And like going back to the same client, like I remember many stories where she finally had to just learn to tap into what felt good for her maternal intuition. Like, I know what my kid needs. I birthed this kid. I know what this kid needs. And I know that in our parallel parenting agreements, when I've got the child, I know that I don't need you calling every single day at nighttime, saying, I love you, I miss you, I love you, I miss you, I love you, I miss you, I love you, I miss you. And ultimately it would pull the child out of the present moment with one parent and then make them feel responsible for the other parent. All of this going on before bedtime, which was just chaotic.
Terrible. Do you know idea.
What I'm saying? So finally this parent had to say, this mother finally had to say, like, look, we've got to renegotiate this. And understood, like, I'm not doing this out of guilt. I'm not doing this out of revenge. I'm not doing this because I'm being shamed. I'm doing this because I'm checking in and I can see that this is not the right thing for our child right now.
Yeah, I always recommend that it's the other way. Like if a child really needs to reach out to the other parent, not because they don't want to eat their green beans necessarily, but that's facilitated, because they're missing the other parent or whatever, that's facilitated and nurtured. But kids like to be doing what they're doing while they're doing it a lot of the time. So to have, I don't know, story time, quiet, anything that's going on at one parent's house, to have that other parent reach in. Well, first of all, like whose need is that as well? Like, is that for
that's
the
exactly
need?
That's the big question. It's
that's
usually
exactly
the parent that needs it.
Yeah.
Or wants control.
Yeah.
And then two parents, two parents will get into this tug of war. It's like, see, he's missing me. He wants to talk to me. And it's like, wait, the greatest gift, Val, again, I love that you said this. The greatest gift you can give your children is the ability to be in the present moment.
Totally.
So even if, like, nobody's saying it's easy to see your kid go off with his little bag for a couple of days to his other, his father's house or whatever. But you know what? Send him off with a smile. Wish him luck. Tell him you're going to have fun. Do you want to take this to daddy's house? Like, make that transition. That's a gift. Help your child learn how to transition so that they're not worrying about you at home crying. Don't make it a big dramatic scene.
Totally.
Save that for your coach. Save that for your bestie. Save that for your, anybody but your kid.
I had a client once who, the mom, she had a really hard time letting go of the child, and he tried to do it without lawyers, but it was like a year and a half, and he still was only allowed to see the kid for a couple of hours, But he actually, I don't know if it's legal where you are, but he actually had in his phone, you can record if one of the people in the room, like, so he could record what was going on. So I could see in video what was happening. And the mom was crouching down with the child, getting him ready, going, okay, you're going to be all right. Streaming tears. Okay, just be safe and make sure you wear your jacket. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing? Right. So we actually, in that particular case, we actually stopped the transitions happening at either parent's home. The transition happened at the school. So she'd pick the child up at school, or he would pick the child up at school. So there was none of that, right? Because the child, little guy just had so much worry for his, and he just didn't have a chance. And you know what, it's a number of years later now, and that it's interesting how that relationship between the parents has transformed for the benefit of their kid, right? So it's just
perfect. Beautiful.
Yay.
That's a classic example. And a lot of our work is really pertains to helping moms navigate all of this with their kids, because there's a lot to deal with. And there's a lot, it's going to be messy. It's not going to be perfect. Life isn't perfect, but even when you have those imperfect moments, we really show moms how to go back, how to clean it up, how to use it as an opportunity, how to, everything is a teachable moment.
And that actually is a segue into what the 4 shift is, because our 4 shift is reframe your divorce, which is everything we kind of been talking about, which is like, all right, we know that it's a mess, right?
It sucks, it hurts.
But if you can reframe it as an opportunity, it shifts the entire experience. Doesn't mean it'll be easy, that there won't be sadness and so forth.
Yeah.
But you realize there's an opportunity to shift it for you in a way that you can design a much better chapter going forward. And it's actually an opportunity for your kids, because they are watching you, how you handle adversity, how you model relationships. What does love mean? What does marriage mean?
Yeah.
Right. So it's an opportunity to show your kids what an authentic life looks like, and how to be responsible and respectful and all that. So
that is great. I love this, like, reframing, like the whole reframing the divorce, because humans, we're meaning makers. And for those who can see this on a video, I'm just holding a piece of paper with a dot on it, right? And so what I learned a long time ago, so that's the event that happened, whatever it is, right? And then all the other stuff around it is the stories we tell ourselves about it, like what happened. And so if you can and we can actually change history too, believe it or not, because we can go, you know what, I went through that time, and right, instead of saying that was the worst thing that ever happened to me, like, what, when you're close into that pain, maybe that's how it feels. But as time, you can say, and I had an opportunity to grow like you wouldn't believe, or I had an opportunity for learning, or I was woken up to, something that I had a blind spot about my own personality, that kind of thing. I know for me, when my husband and I first got into real trouble in our marriage, and I was just devastated, right? Like he ran off with my friend for a while. It was terrible, right? Like, it was just gut wrenching. I also know I wouldn't be having this discussion now if, I wouldn't have been able to expand, wanting to transform the family law industry to be less combative, to ensure that people are, not sucked up into this turmoil for, for the benefit of kids. But I wouldn't have, if I was just bumping along in my marriage, I never would have had this opportunity, right? And I know that this is, so for people, when they, what you can look at is you can look back at that trauma and go, yeah, and I'm resilient because of it, or whatever.
It's true. It's like it, listen, we all know when life is just kind of like going along, boop, ba-doop, 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 it's like those are not our growth moments, right? Unfortunately, growth comes in upheaval. Growth comes in some disturbance, and nobody's like, hey, today's a great day to turn my life upside down, right? But if you can just in that moment, like grasp onto a kernel, a morsel of trust that life is working on your behalf. And regardless of like what you believe, like maybe you believe in guardian angels, maybe you believe that your like father who's passed away is over, is looking over you. But what if you were just to conspire in that direction and believe that it's working out, it's leading me someplace else, and it's going to be better.
Right.
And
life's happening for you, not
for
to
me.
you.
Yes. Yes.
And that's
I'm
a
going to
big leap
use
for
this
people in the thick of it, but it's true.
Say that again, Bill. I didn't quite hear that.
I said, and that's a big leap for a lot of mothers, a lot of people when you're in the thick of it.
Oh my gosh.
But it is true. So the sooner we can help people, even baby steps, kind of get to that kind of mindset, everything is better.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's
that's great.
And I would just piggyback onto what you said, Val. I mean, Bill and I feel exactly the same way. When I look back over on my previous marriage, I feel like I was asleep. Like I don't even recognize myself. And I know that I would not have been propelled into this like healing journey, body, mind, spirit. I didn't really connect. I wasn't connecting any dots. I wasn't like, I was just in a different place. And, my life has opened up in the most beautiful and miraculous ways. And I too would not be here in this seat doing like, I would say arguably the best thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Well, it's it seems like a really great thing to be doing.
Well, we of course, our biggest problem is sorry, Bill.
Yeah, I just said Val's in the same shoes. You would not be doing this work without the experience you had.
Totally. I thought I was experienced because I had thousands of clients that I represented, in so many ways, like just even the fear of having to pay outrageous support for the rest of your life. I sat across payors of support, of spousal alimony, and how I'm like, well, let's just wait. You got to suck it up. Right. Well, being on the opposite end of that was very scary, hence the 6 months of pain and suffering before we settled.
I hear you.
And what's this number 5?
Well, so number 5 is kind of a good way to tie it up because it is invest in coaching, really.
Oh, yeah.
Whether with us, with someone else, with someone you trust. Yep. The point is you need help going through this.
Yeah.
Going through it, thinking that you can go through it alone is a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just going to get beat up.
Yeah. And can you help, just with my listeners, can you share basically what the difference is between coaching, right? Having a divorce coach, coaching through the process, and what if compared to therapy? How would you describe that difference so people get that understanding?
I'm sure we probably both have opinions on that. I have used therapists several times in my past and for my children. And there's a place for therapy for sure. Where it's different is that coaching is much more proactive, I would say. It's much more goal-oriented.
Future focused too.
Future focused, action-oriented. It's not just, we provide a lot of emotional support for sure, but it's not just listening and trying to figure out what the roots of these problems are, but more importantly, what do you do with it now?
Yes.
How do you use this information that we've uncovered to propel you forward and make the best decisions with your life going forward?
That's amazing.
That's what I would say. Like in therapy, you can uncover things about the past, and then they're sort of just left like dangling participles. It's sort of it's like, and now what? What do we do with this discovery? And a coach is not going to like wave a magic wand across your life and fix your problems. a coach is going to do something even better. She or he is going to walk beside you, hold your hand. Imagine them as like the bumper car, the bumpers on the bowling alley, and the ball starts to go off into the gutter, like we're the bumpers, and like push you back into center. But the key component is a coach empowers you to fix yourself, empowers you to save yourself, empowers you to see yourself, empowers you to hear yourself, empowers you to become, but you're going to do it. They're going to be there, like walking beside you, guiding you. But we're not slapping a label on you. We might make a million discoveries along the way and connect dots, and you'll have all these aha moments, like, oh wow, I've been doing that my whole life, or oh, I did that in my last relationship, or oh, I saw my father do that, or whatever it is. But it's all about okay, so now what do we do with it?
Yeah.
So how do we use this?
There's so much at stake in divorce. There's just so much at stake. There's your emotional well-being, your health, how you're performing at work. There's the financial future, of course, the division of assets. There's the children. What are they modeling? What are they seeing? What is their emotional, experience of this? How are they going to perform in school? We so often see kids spiral down. They become either withdrawn or maybe aggressive. Maybe their school falls off, or they have relationship issues later on.
Totally.
All of this. So the more help you can get to get it right, I just think, everybody benefits.
And I want to just add to that to say that investing in coaching is investing in yourself. Because I know because I've been there. I've been terrorized about, oh my God, how am I going to afford these legal fees, and how am I going to afford this whole thing?
Oh,
but
yes.
But I'll tell you, it's unavoidable. There is a cost associated with divorce, but there is a cost, if there's a big cost and a big price to pay, if you don't invest in paying attention to everything. That is paying attention to your children, paying attention to your own emotional, physical, spiritual health, because those ramifications will show up. And when you ignore your children's needs, I mean, it's not because you're a bad parent, or it's because you're intending to do that, but you're like, a lot of people think like, okay, I'm going to just deal with the lawyers first. I'm going to deal with the lawyers and the money and the house and where we're going to live. And they're like, I'll get to this other stuff later. But sometimes when you get to the other stuff, it's already such a big mess.
Yeah, totally.
That you're going to pay 10 times as much.
Exactly. Having a coach guide you through some of that emotions and helping you move forward and vision will actually save you money in the end.
Yes,
it will.
Yes.
So
it absolutely does.
I'm so glad you guys met with me today. It's just, I know your information is going to be so helpful. Now, I'm going to make sure I'm going to repeat this a couple times. Where people can find you is bestselfintuitivedivorce.com. I'll put that link in the show notes. And again, this is Bill Miles, spelt like Miles Long, and Kristen Noel, Noel. And thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for such a wonderful conversation, and for your beautiful work in the world too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's great.
If you found this video helpful, and I hope you did, please give it a thumbs up. Because if you do that, then this video will be able to reach more people. And as well, if you want to stay in closer touch with me, please ring the little bell icon so that you can subscribe to this channel. This is Val. Much, much love.